executive of the company probably has a personal strategy.
Building future leadership in warehousing and distribution. Well, joining us to speak about that today is Kenneth Ackerman, president of KB Ackerman Company. Ken, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Ken, building future leadership, how is that related to strategic planning? Walk us through that.
Well, if you're going to have a plan, you're going to have leaders to execute it. And everybody's mortal. We're all going to not be here at some point. So we have to have the management succession as part of the plan. And without management succession, a company fails. So no matter whether it's warehousing or any other business, you'd better know who can take over if you fall under a bus.
Well, walk us through just a little bit about how we might develop that plan then to build the kind of leadership you're talking about.
Sure. It's sort of a 4-point process. You start by getting the right people in the company. And if you've got a wrong person, you correct that, delete and get the right person. Once you have the right person on the bus, then you have to provide some training. Warehousing's not rocket science, but it does require some familiarity, some training. Probably any intelligent person can learn it and learn it quickly. Then once people are trained, they have to be developed. In other words, coached to take increased responsibility. And the last step is everybody ought to know if something happens to me, I know who can take my place. That's called succession planning.
You know, one thing that you encounter in many industries, but certainly in warehousing and distribution, is what might be called a value statement, a mission statement or plan, some type of public pronouncement about what the company purports to be all about. Sure. Here's my question to you. What value, if any, are these kinds of statements to a company's business strategy? Is there any?
Absolutely, but only if the value statement is genuine, if people believe in it, and they all believe in it. Within the warehousing industry, we've seen some marvelous value statements. A company called USCO, which is now Kuhn and Nagel, had 11 points, and they were framed in the lobby at every warehouse. They were on the back of every business card. And the last one was the best one. It said, "Have fun." But everybody at USCO was expected to know those value statements. I know of one manager who couldn't even name one thing on the value statement. He had a pretty short career. His boss said, let's talk about our value statements, and he was clueless. That didn't go. We have others that are much shorter, much to the point, but they have to be real. They can't be window dressing for the bankers. They have to be really in practice.
It occurs to me that some skeptical person might say, well, that's easy to talk about, but how do you actually employ that? How do you get the employee buy-in? So is this just something that has to be top down, but how do you make the stakeholders lower down on the rung actually buy into the plan, the kind of plan that you're talking about?
Fine, Russell. Let me give you another example. This is a moving and storage company in my town, and their value statement has just 4 points on it. And everybody, truck drivers, freight handlers, everybody knows what it is. And then when they survey the clients, as they do after every move, they go down those 4 points and say, how did we do? So when they come back, they say, here's how well we executed. And everybody in the company knows that's what's going to happen. So if they aren't following the rules, it's going to come back from the client.
You're telling me there's accountability. It's benchmarked against those public statements. They have to be able to show that they have accorded with those statements then.
Exactly. And the accountability is really to the customer. Mm-hmm. They go back to the customer and say, how did we do on this point? And how did we do on that one? And so that's in the questionnaire, so they get grades, immediate grades.
Does this necessarily mean that your company is going to grow? Does it follow that your company is going to grow if you have these types of statements and you employ them and then you hold people accountable?
Well, that's certainly, if you don't do that, you won't grow. On the other hand, not every company, not every management wants to grow. So growth is not a given. I think most people do want to grow. And if you do want to grow, I think having a strategy and having a public value statement. Let me mention a company right in this neighborhood. Southwest says we are a customer service company that has to run an airline. They publish that and they believe it, and anybody who rides on it sees it. The customer service is outstanding. There's another airline, whose name I won't mention, that had a similar statement and withdrew it because people were laughing at them because they were so far from what they said they were. So if it isn't real and people don't believe it, it becomes a joke.
I think I've flown on that second airline in past, no longer. What are some questions that might define a company's strategy?
Well, the first one is, how will we grow, or should we? Then, are we going to grow through vertical integration or horizontal? Vertical integration, for instance, a cold storage warehouse company might build its own buildings, have its own transport, move up the chain. Henry Ford was the case example of vertical integration, making his own steel at the Rouge plant. We might grow by acquiring other companies, or we might grow organically without acquiring it. Those are some of the paths to growth.
You know, in speaking with you about this in past, you've talked about personal strategy trumping corporate strategy. Now, that's an interesting thought. Elaborate on that, if you would. What do you mean by that? Walk us through that.
The chief executive of the company probably has a personal strategy. When I was in business, I had a personal strategy. I wanted to exit from that company and hopefully sell it before a certain birthday. It's something I executed, but I didn't publicize it because it would have probably been counterproductive to advertise that I was going to get out. The thing, though, that we really have to understand is that biology terminates every career, even if nothing else does. So you have to know how long are you going to stay there, and when are you going to get out, and how. And then I think your direct reports, and when I'm interviewing people in any kind of a project, I will say, what's your personal strategy? Where do you expect to be in 5 years? And some people say, in 5 years I expect to retire, or in 5 years I expect to be president of the company. You need to know, everybody needs to know where they want to be.
That's right. That's right. Not a final question, but a final opportunity. What have I neglected to ask you that you think is an area indispensable to cover or to talk about in this context about building future leadership?
Well, I think that the term strategy is abused, and people think that's only for a DuPont or a Ford or a General Motors, that this is something that consultants come in and tell you how to do it. But every good manager should have a personal strategy, and every good chief executive should have a company strategy. He or she should be willing to publicize certain aspects of it, a value statement, a mission statement. Above all, those statements have to be real, they have to be genuine. If the people all the way down the line don't believe in them, they become meaningless, and you'd better execute, do what you say you'll do, or else you become a joke.
What I'm hearing is genuineness and sincerity pay off, and anything else is certainly not going to. Ken, listen, I thank you so much for taking time. I know you're busy here at the conference, but you found time to meet with us. Thank you very much.
A pleasure. Nice to be here. Thank you.
That's Ken Ackerman, KB Ackerman Company, and speaking with us today about building future leadership in our industry of warehousing and distribution. Well, thank you for watching.